All right, welcome back again from lunch. I certainly hope you enjoyed the performance from Jason and DeMarco. We are still enjoying it here from the IRA team and hope that you will be joining us for the remainder of our program today. We have a full afternoon and evening ahead. We are so excited to be in community with all of you across the world and across the country. As I mentioned just moments ago, Arudanti Roy said, "Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing." And this new world that we're imagining, this new equitable reality that we are manifesting, we're going to get to hear from some of the leading scholars and voices and practitioners with us this afternoon. Just a reminder that you can put your comments and affirmations, emojis in the chat. Please follow along and post on social media, lifting up things that have stuck with you, quotes, excitement from the panelists and the speakers. And if you need any tech help this afternoon, please just direct message the Shorenstein Center account, which you should see in the right-hand panel under People. So without further ado, I will pass the mic back to Dr. Khalil Gibran Muhammad, our director at IRA, a wonderful colleague, director, mentor, and friend of mine, and he will provide some introductory remarks for our afternoon keynote. Thanks, Dr. Muhammad.
Thank you very much, Erica. And if we were all together, this would be a moment for stretching and a collective release, just to get our bodies ready for receiving more wisdom. But since we can't do that, I just want to acknowledge how incredible the morning sessions were, how much I learned, and was grateful that our panelists were able to participate, and we're grateful for their time, and how Jason and DeMarco just provided such spiritual nourishment. Music, as they said, always makes us feel good, and I think they delivered in every conceivable way possible. So I'm grateful for that. This is a really special moment for me in having the opportunity to introduce President Ruth Simmons, who is the president of Prairie View A&M University in the great state of Texas, currently making headlines. She was president of Brown University from 2001 to 2012, the first woman to lead an Ivy League school, and the only African American to do so to this day. By her own example, her own truth, her own courage, she has changed the face of higher education. Under her leadership, Brown made significant strides in improving its standing as one of the world's finest research universities. A French professor before entering university administration, President Simmons held an appointment as professor of comparative literature and Africana studies at Brown. After completing her PhD in Romance languages and literatures at Harvard, she served in various faculty and administrative roles at the University of Southern California, Princeton, and Spelman College before becoming president of Smith College, the largest women's college in the United States. At Smith, she launched a number of important academic initiatives, including an engineering program, the first at an American women's college. President Simmons is the recipient of many honors, including a Fulbright Fellowship to France, the 2001 President's Award from the United Negro College Fund, the 2002 Fulbright Lifetime Achievement Award, the 2004 Eleanor Roosevelt Val-Kill Medal, Foreign Policy Association Medal, the Ellis Island Medal, and so many others. She continues to serve in leadership capacity, serving on the boards of the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, and the Holdsworth Center. She also serves as a member of the board of directors of Square. She's received many, many honorary degrees, and Brown's faculty's highest honor, the Susan Culver Rosenberg Medal in 2011. 2 years ago, I visited President Simmons at Prairie View. I was so excited to do so because I had reached out months in advance to try to get on her calendar. She was gracious, made time, shared many pearls of wisdom with me personally, and I immediately adopted her as a mentor. I knew of her work at Brown University beginning in 2003 to investigate Brown's ties to slavery. In many ways, that work that she accomplished at Brown in encouraging it to search for Brown's own search for fundamentally transforming our national understanding of slavery in New England and the dimensions of slavery and capitalism beginning in the colonial period as well as the contributions of the indigenous and enslaved in building the infrastructure and wealth upon which that school rests today. Her work inspired the scholarship of Craig Stephen Wilder in his book Ebony and Ivy, in its research on the oldest universities in America and their ties to slavery, including Harvard University. 1 year after meeting her, I also visited the campus with my daughter, Jordan, and shortly after the tour began, there was an indigenous land acknowledgement and a statement about the role that enslaved people had played. And in this firsthand witness to how that campus has been socialized to tell the truth of its own history, I saw firsthand her own legacy being transferred to my own child. The work that she accomplished in revising Brown's official history, in establishing a commission for the city of Providence in the state of Rhode Island to have a historical reckoning in its own public record, to create a Center for Slavery and Justice and other major research and teaching initiatives, to strengthen the position and role of the Department of Africana Studies, that center of knowledge production about race and racism in the world could not be more relevant than it is today. To reach out to HBCUs and to create knowledge transfer and technical assistance, as well as to create a pipeline to the university, to raise an endowment of $10 million, which, according to the news in the past few months, achieved that goal, to fund the education of the children of Providence. This is ultimately what a process of truth and transformation looks like in real time. In these ways and so many more, the very conversation campuses and the country are having today about everything from Confederate monuments to reparations are what President Simmons helped to start. Please join me in welcoming President Ruth Simmons to the Truth and Transformation 2020 conference. Thank you.
Khalil, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you again. Wonderful to be with you today for this wonderful conference. And I have to say again, as old as I am, I guess I'm always surprised when I learn something new. But this morning was a delight. And I must say that I found insights that were so fresh and clarifying for me, having done this work for so long. So thank you and your team for organizing this. It's truly wonderful. I just make one correction before I go forward, and that is when I came to Prairie View, I decided that I would leave all of my corporate boards to devote more time to this position. And so in April, I left the Square board, and I'm no longer on a corporate board. So again, my thanks for the invitation to be with you for this convening on racial equality. You know, when one hears the theme, truth and transformation, it's a little startling because you recognize that you're really on different terrain. The honesty of that, the clarity of that just strikes one as being so refreshing. And yet this is a most fitting title, as we are in the midst of a profound reckoning with the lies we have told ourselves and others over the past centuries. Lies about who we are as a nation, lies about how we practice our professions, lies about the role of racism in building and sustaining our economy. Well, I say finally we begin to engage in the most promising activity possible in regard to enhancing our way of life, our form of government, and the public's trust. That is to say, a way of life in which the many participate on an equal basis, bringing a variety of perspectives that improve our lives and provide for a better future for all of us. Well, you know, I rather feel as if I'm in a time warp. I started out as a child of sharecroppers, prisoners of an unjust system that continued to chain individuals to servitude even after the end of slavery. In the 50s and 60s, in the South of my birth, the rules were clear, crystal clear. The constraints were imposed rigorously, and the opportunities were foregone for a lifetime. Stay in your place. Do not speak up. Do not aspire to be more than what is allowable for your kind. My oldest brother related a story of a white citizen of our small town in East Texas who invited him to hear his daughter play the piano. My brother was very excited about this invitation. And so he arrived at their home, but was told, no, he couldn't come inside. He was to go around to the side of the house, stand outside, and listen to her performance through a window that protected her from his presence. Therein lay the kinds of lies that racists constructed. While projecting confident affability and inclusiveness, they deftly and simultaneously insulted, dehumanized, and excluded Blacks. These mores have been deeply embedded in our national life, enduring in spite of phenomenal advances that grew out of human ingenuity and intelligence. Intelligence that should have also enabled substantial advances in the capacity for the humane treatment of others, but somehow did not. Today, we are in the midst of a spasm of conscience as a result of blatant and omnipresent images of modern lynchings that question the truthfulness of assertions that we are in a post-racial period in our evolution as a nation. A woman en route to a new job is stopped by a rural policeman and arrested, and is later found dead in her jail cell. A baseball player returning to his parents' home from an errand is accused of auto theft in his own car and shot by the police in the driveway of his parents' home. These images are ever present for us at Prairie View because these two individuals, Sandra Bland and Robbie Tolan, are both alumni of our university. The infringement of their rights is a story that cannot be buried. It lives to be retold as one after another individual is murdered or jailed because of racial bias. If we did not know this before, we know now that lies cannot withstand the test of time. They will be exposed, and the reckoning will be painful, revealing the corruption of those who perpetuated them. While as a corporate board member, I am aware of the many ways the business sector often fails to conduct itself in the most open way, I want to focus in my remarks on universities, an area that I know far better. Universities, I always insist, should, consistent with their academic and research mission, promote truthfulness and transparency. Seems pretty simple, but often it's one of the most difficult things to implement. Trust in university teaching and research requires a belief in the openness, honesty, and rigor of how academics teach, create, invent, and conduct research. How is one to trust the outcome of university efforts without assurance that those guiding and participating in the endeavor are unflinchingly committed to the truth? The perception of routine equivocation on the part of universities convinces the public to be cautious in assigning credibility to the data and facts that scholars claim to be free of bias. Following the murder of George Floyd, something quite remarkable began to occur in this country. Well, it's remarkable to me because in 70 years, I had never heard or seen it. That is, the country began to speak the name of an evil that has cast a shadow over so much of the history and accomplishments of the nation, often tarnishing even the good that has been done. Racism. To hear so many avow that we still live in a racist society, quite frankly, took my breath away. I wondered what this new acknowledgement meant and whether it would result in a different future. But for the moment, I was simply relieved that the truth was finally being spoken so plainly and assertively by many throughout the country. Now, today, I reside in the Houston, Texas area, where corporations and major institutions come together to promote the city. The Greater Houston Partnership, an economic development organization serving the region, invited me to speak to them recently about what they might do in this moment to address racism, its effect on underserved groups, as well as its long-term impact on the health of the city. They sought to understand how they might set a new direction, overturning the inequalities so long evident in regard to these underserved populations. For once, they did not seek to couch their interest in the language of profitability. Confounded by recent events, they simply turned to the question of how to understand the reality of what different communities experience at the hand of systemic racism. So I spoke to them about the fact that past efforts to address this problem had obviously limited effect. But wanting to respond to measures that leaders of corporations could undertake immediately to begin to address the problem, I listed a number of things that I thought were important to ensure a greater chance of enduring change. And so I said as a beginning, number one, we could lead instead of follow by imagining how we can begin to create a better union and implementing actions with far greater urgency. I was very impressed in the panel this morning to hear the comment that CEOs, in particular, leaders of businesses, I would say leaders of all organizations, should move outside the four walls of their corporations. And they should focus on society and use their voice to promote change in society as well. Two, we could remember that the central problem of race relations in the country is at a basic level. It's just our failure to accept and respect other human beings and institute activities that arouse those kinds of feelings rather than feelings of distrust, competition, resentment, and bias. I actually think that there's so much of what we do in the corporate world and in universities that arouse those feelings of distrust, competition, resentment, and bias. What if we decided to find a different means of finding our way to excellence instead of pitting people against each other? Three, we could better police biased and discriminatory behavior and clearly articulate principles that undergird fairness and equality. How often in our different milieux do we see routinely made statements that diminish others, women, gays, blacks, Hispanics, jokes that are told, the way that people talk over others because they're thought to have insignificant and unimportant input. The behaviors that we see every day that we have the opportunity to address, every time we fail to address them, we are deepening the problem of racism in the country. So truthfulness is also about engaging at every moment, in every setting, efforts to demean or diminish others. Outspoken assertions about the need for fairness, openness to difference, and a commitment to be inclusive can travel far, both within corporations and well beyond. For we could recognize that racism has withheld opportunities for generations and enact programs to give people a chance, overriding structures that have long privileged the privileged and blocked access to others. You know, we have a lot of excuses for why we can't do certain kinds of things. And we always say that we can't do them because it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to give access to someone if they have not met the letter of the qualifications that we insist on. Overriding generations of prejudice is really going to be the only way that we have to eradicate systemic racism. We can cease practicing tokenism, number 5. If one wants to address an evil as pervasive as racism, token actions will have little effect. And that's basically what we've been doing for decades. As long as one person is there symbolically to say we're doing what we should do, we relax. And this is where I've taken our CEOs locally to task. And I've said, if your way of addressing racism is to continue to practice tokenism, don't even bother, because everybody understands that that is a sinister act. And finally, I said we could deal with the iconography, symbols, and language because they play powerfully into and create feelings of alienation among excluded groups, while empowering and extending racial domination. Why don't people get that? As long as we reify the most heinous acts and behavior, it gives permission for others to continue practices that exclude and dominate others. And so we have to deal with that forthrightly. My efforts to promote concerted action by our business community led to my appointment to co-chair with Gretchen Watkins, the president of Shell Oil, a new committee in Houston, the Committee on Racial Equity. Our committee has already begun to meet, and we have agreed that the corporations and institutions that make up this committee will pool funds to ensure that we eschew tokenism and marginal impact. We intend to take bold action and to enlist all of our member corporations in the effort to address racism in our city. But to get to this level of action and to reach this level of consensus that such action is needed, we cannot bypass the fact of the racial disparities that exist in our communities and the attitudes that create and sustain them. Truth-telling is the key. No matter how painful or disturbing, we cannot make progress if we do not understand the nature and extent of the problem we face. The stories now being told about racism in our country need to be told, and they need to be heard. I remember once when I was at Brown, and it may have been in regard to our study on slavery and justice, But I remember one trustee saying to me, why can't you people just get over it? Yeah, we'll never get over it, nor should we. Deniers will counter these stories, these truths with mistruths and misrepresentations. But we have to persist, above all, in telling the truth. Upon the 10th anniversary of Brown University's historic Slavery and Justice report, I went back to Brown to speak about what I had learned from the investigation into the entanglement of our founders with the transatlantic slave trade. When we formed the Slavery and Justice Committee, we hardly imagined what would happen, that it would become internationally visible, that it would be able to disprove the assertion that truth-telling comes at a severe cost to social harmony, institutional reputation, and donor support. I was told I'd never be able to raise any money after the slavery and justice work. Instead, we raised far more than we anticipated. Our campaign ended at $1.6 billion. Our simple aim in commissioning this undertaking was revealed through the steering committee's authoritative report, the obligation to tell the truth about our history. The report's most salient observation about the burden of truth-telling is that this burden arises because we have a natural human tendency to evade, extenuate, or deflect the full burden of the past. Confronting massive human rights violations in which not only active but passive participants have played an important role can be a divisive undertaking for communities that have promoted forgetting and lying as a means of healing the wounds from such atrocities. On that occasion, I was proud to say that truth-telling not only enhanced the profile of Brown, but also bequeaths to the university and its students a legacy of truth-telling that may continue to inspire excellence and integrity in scholarship and stewardship for decades to come. So my most ardent hope for our country is that current truth-telling about racism in our nation will produce insights on how to have a stronger nation. That the way ahead will be difficult is certain. That there will be those who virulently and violently oppose the truth is also certain. Yet lasting transformation can only come from our facing up to the real and not the imagined consequences of discrimination on the basis of difference. And that transformation is certainly long overdue. Thank you again for having me. It has been a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you so much, President Simmons. We are so delighted for joining us.
And I would just want to say how much I appreciate again your taking the time, sharing your journey and some of the inside baseball of leading elite institutions in powerful places where a lot of decisions are made that impact the world and the society we live in is very important in modeling what truth and leadership look like. So President Simmons, as you know, I'll always be your fan, and I'm happy that you're in Houston carrying on the good work that needs to happen there. Thank you.